Good evening. Welcome to On the Spot. I'm your host, Norman Graham. To my far right, my political analyst from On the Spot, Saquan Jones. In the center, Stephen Thompson. We have a couple of subjects here. Our first subject will be U.S. gas prices. Our second subject, U.S. voter suppression. And third, George Clooney protests in Sudan. First subject, U.S. gas. Saquan, let's get it going.
Well, I think that as a history major, we are now experiencing what should have happened 35 years ago. Jimmy Carter was president at the time. He wanted to sort of get us off of foreign oil. The oil lobby, the impatience of the American people sort of killed that idea of, us sort of weathering the storm of high gas prices, developing technology that'll help us utilize other areas in which we don't have to depend on foreign oil. Jimmy Carter had it right 35 years ago. It was killed. Ronald Reagan became president for the next 2 terms, was not the tremendous environmentalist, philosophically. And now we're now experiencing now what we should have experienced 35 years ago with high gas prices, our dependency on Middle Eastern oil that is tremendously tumultuous, to say the least. And now we have to figure out a way on whether or not we're going to actually start to develop new technology. And now the worst thing about this situation is that as the American voter, the casual American voter, is not going to blame the turmoil in the Middle East. They're not going to blame the reduction of oil output in the Middle East. They're going to blame President Obama.
Well, wait, hold on. We're going to get to that.
The reason, I'm sorry, guys.
No. Finish that because I got something.
He's going to get blamed for something that's totally out of his control. Blaming any president for high gas prices is almost like blaming a parent for a child, committing a crime.
Okay, well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to show Rachel Maddow, radio talk show host, and television, not Rachel Maddow, I'm sorry, Randy Rhoads, played some footage of Fox News in 2008, blatantly saying that this is not the president's fault when George Bush was in office.
Well, one of the problems that we've had for a number of years with the media, and the entire media, mostly journalists, is that these charges get put out there, either against the Bush administration or somebody else, and journalists don't really examine the substance of them like they do during a political campaign, at least in the Washington Post and sometimes on O'Reilly with his reality check on this channel. They look at certain claims and promises to see what the facts are behind them. And the facts are, as you suggested, no president has the power to increase or to lower gas prices. Those are market forces.
Now, fast forward when Obama's in office a few years later, these same people, they have them on their show now saying, guess what? Blame the president. So now here's the question I'm going to throw at you. We stuck up, in plain English, we stuck up Iraq. And took their oil and everything else.
Well, we didn't take the oil. Actually, the oil's still there. We haven't utilized any of it.
Let's go back to what's going on. Now, you understand that the talking points of the Republican Party are at a point where you have to come up with an issue. Because really, if you have been about economics and the latest numbers for employment are going up, so what are you going to talk about? So it goes back to what Norm was saying, that they know the consensus is that the oil prices are not affected by, the president doesn't have this direct magic wand. So the key is with looking at, you got to look at the globe. We've got issues. Just one example. They are using 320,000 more barrels of oil in Japan because of last year's tsunami.
Yes.
Because that is energy. They have an issue. But we have issues in Syria, Sudan. China is on an economic tear. That takes oil.
No, so, and I agree with that. But at the end of the day, we are now reaching a limit that was foreseen 35 years ago.
Right. Yes.
And now we are in an instance where President Obama is not introducing any legislation that's going to allow onshore drilling, which is domestic drilling.
Right.
He hasn't. He's been an opponent of, increasing new drilling. Let me just say that. The drilling that's existing that has already been grandfathered, that's okay. No additional drilling. Then we have the Keystone Pipeline that's not going to be, that he's fighting against.
Why?
Because now is the time for us to develop technology to stop this from happening in the future.
But the Keystone Pipeline is not coming, the gas is not staying in America.
it's
That's going out the country.
Well, it is going to go out there.
Republicans
We are going to be utilizing the Republicans' mindset is that it's creating jobs, but at the end of the day, we still maintain this pacifier of what we have going on. It's time to get off of foreign oil, and the fact that the gas prices are rising now, the same way they did 2008. I can only associate this situation going to the next presidential election.
Well, it's got to be, because you got to understand it is an international situation. All of these variables kick in. You cannot have China who's on an economic tear that's using oil at a level, and you have to add in the fact that the industry. The industry has layers of issues. You have a basis of crisis around the globe. You have traders, and then you have speculators, and that creates what we call a perfect storm.
And the speculators will be going to jail soon if they keep playing with these oil prices.
Because
they're not playing with the oil. They're not playing with the oil
one of our team just came back from Florida. He talked about the fact that you can look at the prices as we go up the East Coast, rising. But the issue is, there is at least 90 days to 120 days of supply in the pipeline. They just raise it because they're gonna make more money.
So are you saying that that's not the oil speculators?
That is the fact that you can't speculate on something that is not going to be here forever.
Oh, that's
you
not
understand?
true. That's not true.
Oil's not going to be. No. You know, I understand that, Steve. I completely am with you in this situation. But the reason why, for instance, they don't speculate on something that's in tremendous abundance. You know why? Because there's too much of it to speculate on. There's no money in there.
But in that, we are going to have to come back on
this, right? We are losing so much oil right now. Right. That's where the money is being made. And the fact that they are speculating on something that's not going to be in existence.
Right.
It could be 20, 30 years from now. We don't know because nobody's personally in the ground.
So we definitely need a movement towards not only electric cars, but a whole idea of an environmental idea of we gotta get off the oil, get off the black gold.
Gas prices is $4.01 for
$4.03
for a gallon of regular.
Yes.
So now to close this out, it's very important for us to listen to what Randy Rhodes had recorded, which, like I said, she has Fox News telling everybody clearly that a president as well as Congress can't do anything about oil prices. This was in 2008. Now, listen to them now. We're going to close it out with this here.
It's up almost double under this president. Did anyone see that coming? Here's a guy who said, no, I'm good for the economy. No, he's been nothing but bad. Look at it. A year ago, $3.13. But I'm telling you, the day he was sworn into office, $1.83.
We're back on the spot. Next subject, voter suppression.
Big issue. What happens is, just in March 14th, the governor of Pennsylvania signed to law a strict voter ID that's necessary to vote.
Is that a Republican governor?
Yes, it is.
Of course.
So what happens is we are in a situation where a lot of people thought this is over with from really the Civil Rights Act, Voter Rights Act. So we're seeing a consensus. There are 30 states now that need in essence, a state ID to go vote. This is an issue that they had a basically unsuccessful situation in South Carolina. They passed a law, and the Justice Department, Mr. Holder, Commissioner Holder, came in and said, you know what? That's not going to work. It's going to basically invalidate the Voting Rights Act. So we have an issue of voter suppression. It's back.
Well, let's
strategy.
I'm gonna say that I don't understand why you two always try to make this into some new civil rights situation.
Oh well.
Now, let me get a couple seconds here. First off, it's not about voter suppression of minorities, which was what was the Voting Act initially there to respond.
Right.
It's not saying these. I mean, although they are absolutely wrong to do it.
Right.
They're not affecting a certain gender or a certain ethnic group. You understand? Minorities, just as the majority, will have to do the same thing. Now, if we look at this, right, if they do, we have Republican government. I mean, I don't understand why this stuff surprises anyone.
Right.
But at the end of the day, we need a smarter voter. Do you understand? When you have George Bush, who gets elected because 89% of the people who voted for him said that he looked like he was more likely for me to have a beer with him.
Right.
And you see Sarah Palin, who almost single-handedly won the election for the Republicans, and to know that she is absolutely unqualified to lead this nation. And we need a smarter voter to actually be able to see through these things. And a smarter person is going to go through all of the requirements.
What do you mean by a smarter voter? Did that,
right. A smarter,
if you're not educated, you can't vote?
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that, Norm. What I'm saying is that we are electing people who should not be elected. For instance, in this district alone, Ed Towns should not be in Congress.
Well, see,
Charlie Rangel should not be in Congress.
That may be a
These
political
people
view.
should not be here.
Why?
And the reason why they're there is because I'm going to go do whatever I need to do to get this requirement to vote. But the casual person who votes based off emotion and not rationale is not going to do this. And you are going to have a more smarting voter base. They're not saying that if you're not smarter you can vote, you can't do this, but I'm just saying, look at the other side of what could potentially happen, not just from a racial standpoint.
Here's what you're saying, and I hear what you're saying about smarter votership, informed voters, but that's not the issue. The issue is access. Now, we understand that 20% of minority voters usually, or they define, don't have those IDs.
So whose fault is that?
But that's
whose fault is that?
Understand what we're saying.
Why do you have to make it a minority thing?
Because that's the numbers. The Voting Rights Act comes from a particular history of a very ugly history.
But not this right here. It's not saying ethnically charged.
But they know statistically, and they know by, if you're going to do this in Mississippi, where you have a defined African American community, where 20% of those individuals do not have IDs. So here's an example.
Why don't you have an ID?
Here's an example, because I gotta type in on it.
A 65-year-old woman who's disabled. You mean to tell me she has to get out of her bed, wheelchair, whatever, to go down to the driver's license bureau?
It was closed.
Okay, that was closed. And have something to prove that she's able to vote. Have lived in Mississippi all her life.
And voted.
Does an illegal immigrant have to do that?
But that's not the issue.
I'm just saying. That is the issue.
Okay, let me
get it. You're making an African American.
I'm not making a minority. It is a minority.
And so a 65-year-old Caucasian
Voting Rights Act
with the
is
same
law. This is not something that I made up.
Hold up.
Right.
The statistics show 25% of African Americans, 16% of Latinos will be affected by this.
Right.
Yes. Now, 11% of other. But here's your problem, Saquon. The problem is where they chose to do this, like a place like Wisconsin, you then turned around and say you got to go get a separate ID. The ID that you've been voting for the past 25 years is no longer acceptable.
No,
your driver's license, wait. Mm-hmm. Your driver's license is no longer acceptable. But Johnny can use his gun license is good enough. So now we close. Wait. We close all the local spots and make you have to travel 80 miles to get this here ID. So what they're trying to do is, now this is a Republican strategy. This is the strategy because in all the Republican states where governors are, as well as the Senate majority, this is what go on. So they planned this here before as a way to suppress 5 million votes.
First off, you brought up Wisconsin's governor who is on the verge of being booted out of office.
Exactly.
Revoted. So let's be clear.
Right.
Okay? What you're doing is that you don't reference that his actual constituency has over 1 million signatures to repeal his election.
That's fine.
And you're making it seem as though those are not his same sort of race who are doing the same thing. But you're making it seem like the same 65-year-old Caucasian woman does not have to do the same thing. You're making it seem like the same 65-year-old Asian woman does not have to make it do the same thing.
No, I didn't bring up the statistics.
No, you did not bring it up, but you brought up. But Steve said,
but the 30 states, we know the statistics.
You understand? I'm sure.
What I'm saying. The Department of Justice took the case up in South Carolina.
I am not disagreeing with either of you. Right. I'm not disagreeing with that. This is absolutely 1,000% incorrect to what they're doing. I agree with you 100%. What I don't agree with is how you're trying to sell it as this minority-based effort to suppress only African American
And
voters
Latinos.
and Latinos, or Asians, or Arabs, or
Democrat voters. We'll
anyone.
change it that way. We'll make it simple for you.
They're not saying you as a Democrat have to go get a special ID. They're not saying you as a Republican have to go get a special ID. I'll make a parallel for you that I just came up with, which is going to be fantastic because I'm so smart and I'm able to come up with these things.
Honey nuts,
just like that. Right?
Pretty good.
Now, Obama instituted loan modification, right?
Right.
Everybody's available to do it.
Yep.
Right? But in order for you to do it, you got to go through a whole bunch of paperwork.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
In order for you to reap this benefit, this is what you have to do it. Banks count on people not doing it so that they can foreclose on the house and not getting the right?
Right.
Is that so?
Right.
How is this any different? You know how you have access to it.
Okay.
Right.
You're right.
But you need to, as a voter, have a drive. You know how mad I am when I
That's
ran for
not
office? You know how
right.
mad I am when I ran for office against an individual who's been in office for 35 years and has done nothing. I would go out and I would say, name 3 things that person did, and I'll drop out of the race.
Right.
And everybody who voted for him couldn't name 3 things, but they still voted for him.
Right.
We need a smarter voter, and a smarter voter is going to be willing to do the same thing that the person who wants their loan modified to do.
No.
And fill out the
That's
paperwork
impossible.
and do it.
There is
That's all I'm
no
saying.
reason you
Do you
have to
understand what I'm
have,
saying?
I understand what you're
Okay,
saying.
that's all I care
But
about.
that is not the test. Period. It's not.
All right.
You're an American citizen. You have a right to vote. A driver's license. You should not have to jump through hoops and Saquan.
But the person who's doing-
historical ugly truth about the South and voter tests.
Wisconsin is furthest from the South than you are from
I
Africa
understand
right
that. But the idea is
not the South, but let's look at the population. Don't look like you.
No, but that doesn't make it seem as though they don't have to do the same thing. Now, we need to come on the show and saying that only specifically African Americans or minorities have to do
that
this.
gun license.
That's a difference.
Let's use this for example.
So black people don't have guns?
Wait. That gun license. That gun license.
Okay.
People of color walking around with gun license?
You got one, don't you?
But
So I hate guns. I want to melt every gun and send it to the moon. But if you have one, what makes you think that you're the only black person in the planet with a gun license?
In them other states.
Okay.
A lot of the requirements they have, minorities are not the ones that have those requirements.
Quantifiably impact. Saquan, the Justice Department can't take a case and they don't do it just because you want to do it or I want to do it. They have to have a basis of fact that's based on numbers. And that's why that South Carolina
disproportionately.
There you go. So it's not a small thing. It's not saying, and I hear what you're saying, but it impacts. So South Carolina,
violation
Alabama,
of the Voting Rights
all
Act.
of these violations.
You're misconstruing what the Voting Rights Act is. It was based solely to help minorities vote, to get rid of the Jim Crowisms that were stopping and suppressing minority voting.
But what you will be doing will be suppressing 5 million. 5 million.
Not minority voters,
predominantly
predominantly Democrats and predominantly minority.
Why?
I didn't make up the statistic.
We didn't make up these numbers.
So
these numbers
only the Republicans have the ability
in
to
the states they did it and the areas they did this in.
They
and
did
their
it
purpose,
statewide.
the purpose that they did
not
this here
area-wide.
is because they use flawed statistics. Because when they said, well, guess what? Disproportionately, we have voter fraud. Really? 5 constitute voter fraud? 3 people constitute voter fraud?
Voter fraud is now under the idea that voter fraud is coming up to about be 1 or 2%, 1.5%.
What you guys
What
are
is
not
that saying?
understanding, at the end of the day, right, you're referring to southern states and northern states that were never going to be Democratic presidentially ever.
But that has nothing
at the
to
end
do
of the
with
day,
the fact.
it does have everything to do with the fact. I mean, it has. You're right, Steve. I understand. It doesn't have anything to do with the fact. But you guys are emphasizing and implying that somehow, if this didn't happen, that these states would go Democrat.
No, we're not talking about the state. We're talking about the people. The people that happen to vote Democrat when we're going to close out this segment. And with the people that vote Democrats are usually the ones that will be disenfranchised based on this legislation.
You're saying that the ones
I didn't make it up.
So Democratic voters are lazy.
No,
they won't.
They might not have access. The minority people might not have access to get 80 miles to, because see, it's one side you did it, but it's the other side where you made the comment, you said, wait, listen, you said that guess what, everybody have to jump through the same hoops. No, because I closed the motor vehicle in your neighborhood that will make you travel further.
There you go.
That's how they got you.
But then now, like I said, you're assuming that every Republican is making $1 billion and have access
No, I'm not.
the same way.
No,
we're just talking about
but you didn't hear what I said. If you closed the motor vehicle in my areas and you made me have to go real far to get to it, that's how you got me.
All right.
We'll be back. We're back. George Clooney gets arrested.
Yes, he is doing some interesting things. He's protesting President Omar al-Bashir, the president of Sudan, about the idea that this man is basically initiating bombing raids, allegedly, on his civilians. And he basically went last week live for about 7 days and saw young children with shrapnel in them. He basically was on camera, of course, and he came back to the Washington consulate. And he was with Ben Jealous of the NAACP, a number of clergy. They want to bring attention to this very serious matter. So it is an issue. I don't know whether you think so.
Well, let me touch it first.
Okay.
I've been to Sudan.
Yes, you have been.
I've been to Darfur. This is coming up 5 years right now. I owe James M2 made a film. Then I'm going to go back to Sudan and maybe possibly the next week or two.
Right.
And I'm going to finish it up.
Right.
But now that we have a president of color. But part of being in Sudan,
up close and personal.
Up close, we filmed in Darfur.
This is not from second person.
No, this is not secondhand. This is we filmed in Darfur.
Okay.
And I got a lot of mixed feelings. That's why I have to go back. Of course, 5 years, but I'm gonna do it right. George Clooney spoke on Capitol Hill the day before. I watched it on C-SPAN.
We'll look at that.
And he showed some footage. One of the young kids got hit by a bomb and shrapnel got into his foot, so he was right there in the line of fire.
Yes.
And this has been an ongoing issue. We debated off mic, and the subject became, should we talk about Syria? Should we talk about this? And Darfur might be another Hotel Rwanda.
Right.
That we didn't realize the magnitude of what was really happening until how in depth it was happening until it came to our face and the movie came out.
Right.
Then you realize millions of people are getting killed.
A genocidal type situation, right?
Exactly. And if I'm not mistaken, Colin Powell said Darfur is genocide.
Right.
When Bush was in office. So now our problem becomes, what are we going to do? If we go into Syria for 200 people maybe a day, 100 people a day getting killed, you got thousands in Africa getting killed. You got things going on in the Congo in various places that we don't talk about because we don't have a financial interest in it.
Right. Well, I don't mean to cut off your thing you got going on right now, and I think that Sudan is a tremendously vile place for the people who are being affected by it. But what I do get sick of is the celebrity look at me activism.
But you got to be careful with that.
No, I'm just saying
George Clooney, you do have to take
line of fire.
You have to take the task.
Were you going to line of fire?
I'm not going to line of fire.
Well, I went to line of fire, but you know what? Before I went to line of fire, you know what I had to do?
But what we have to is
you have to be
careful. So George Clooney didn't go to the Sudan. Are we talking about the story?
But be careful about putting somebody a part of a group who has definitely been very active for a lot of years.
I understand that,
and he's not your run-of-the-mill just Paris Hilton.
And that's what sort of takes away from the complexity and the devastation that's going on there is the fact that now that we have somebody of star power to take up the cause, right. Now we have this sort of attention that we can give to it because we have somebody
the idea he's saying, and I'm going to use my star power. Listen,
why choose Sudan? Why not go to North Korea where they can't even feed their people?
Get in.
Why can't they go to Syria where the government is actually bombing their people?
Syria, but wait a minute. In the Sudan, they're bombing their people.
Their own people, right?
That's what they're doing.
I understand that.
But here's the difference. The difference is Syria is in the paper every day. Syria is on the news every day.
Exactly.
But there's something going on another part of the world that's not being talked about. Cody 2012 brought that subject up because when he interviewed the people, They talked about.
You know what's great about Syria right now?
What's that?
It's the fact that they're both in Africa, both Sudan and Syria. So you cannot go back and say another part of the country or another part of the world.
But the seriousness
about the world because they're both in Africa.
What I'm saying, what we don't talk about.
If we picked up Sudan and put it into Europe, then you would be like, why are they not talking about some place?
No,
in
that's
Africa?
not the issue. That's not the
I'm
issue.
saying
It's clearly about making sure that this issue becomes something that people are aware of, and that's why George Clooney said, because we can really we're saying that. Listen, if you're going to use your celebrity, maybe you can use it for a good purpose. And people do think, and I think he does.
I agree,
he is
Steve.
very good intent. He's not Johnny come lately. Has been at this for a little while.
Yes.
And he didn't just go. He was in the line of fire. He was there. He constantly takes those trips. He constantly takes to find out what's going on.
I don't want there to be
and
any.
you have to understand, there was a group of ecumenical, a number of Catholics, Islam, church collectives that are saying, we need to understand, we're about this. A few congressmen, Democrat. So they're saying, not only Clooney, Ben Jealous is the head of the NAACP.
Exactly.
We're a part of this. We're not just one celebrity. And you and I know it's very important to have a little bit of light.
We went.
Not a problem.
I'm not disagreeing with that.
Right.
And I agree with the fact that I'm happy that there's someone to spread the light on this situation. What I don't like is the fact that now we're talking about this because George Clooney is a part of it, as opposed to John Smith from Arkansas.
But that's not.
or
Well, we
James
gotta
Doe
be real. If Angelina
Florida.
Jolie goes to the Capitol, Washington,
Why?
to testify,
Why is it like
Why
are we not talking about this? Because Norm went there 5
Because
years ago.
here's the difference.
And we're talking about it because George Clooney went there 5
I've been
years
talking
ago?
about it, and I've been
he's
there.
had-
but he who controls the media tells the story. So major media has decided to put George Clooney up there. So that's why it's in the news, because they decided. For us, it was in the news. We went with a delegation of about 30 journalists of color 5 years ago.
Right.
5 years ago. BET, TV One, all of us was out there to hear firsthand what their people had to say. So it's been out there, and it's just something that other America don't want to talk
Well, what I do want to say, Steve, is that a lot of the times is that we talk to a more savvy, political, socio-political, economically sound viewer, voter, person. A lot of people don't know what's going on in Sudan.
True.
You know, I mean, if you explain, maybe we can see, you know, outside of just the genocidal portion of it, because genocide has been going on in Sudan for since as long as I've been, as long as I can remember, actually. And, you know, a lot of people don't understand the fact that, you know, just because you come from a different tribe, you're being killed. Or just because you have a different background as the controlling regime, then you're being killed. You know, it's not the same situation as if, you know,
but look what you're
it's
doing.
almost like if you're a Democrat, you get killed, and you're not a Republican.
Look what you're doing. People viewing now will have just a little bit more. So whether we pride ourselves on, if you're in the beauty parlor or in the barbershop and you hear that, maybe you'll go, oh, okay,
Let's
you know
look
what?
it up and find
Let's
out.
look it out. What's going on? I heard Saquan say it's about tribal issues. And that's very deep. That's what it's about.
Yeah.
So now there is an awareness that they never had before. I mean, we all can really know about, you know, the Knicks, the Nets, and whatever you talk about, Tebow. I don't know what that's about. But nonetheless, that's the issue, expanding that. But we probably have to close it up.
We're out of here. It's time to go. Next week, we're out.